Professor?
You're gonna find this hard to believe.
I was sent here for you.
From the future?
50 years from now.
Could you give me that one more time, please?
Stay with me.
In the beginning, the Sentinels were just targeting mutants. Then they began targeting everyone. They've come a long way to guide us, to bring us together. The X-Men. We need your help.
Tell whoever it was that sent you that I'm busy.
The person who sent me was you.
It's going to take all of us to end this war.
You're Beast?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Pretty strong for a scrawny kid.
I said you need to leave.
You and I are gonna be good friends. You just don't know it yet. We're gonna need Mystique.
Why?
You're a cold-hearted bitch.
Well, don't hold back.
Where's Magneto?
That man is a monster. He's being held 100 floors beneath the most heavily guarded building on the planet.
I know a guy. He'd be a young man now.
He's fascinating. He's a pain in the ass.
Prison break? That's illegal, you know.
Only if you get caught.
Charles.
Good to see you too, old friend.
This is gonna be fun.
There is a new enemy out there. You'll need a new weapon for this war.
Everything that happens now is in your hands. In the future.
Do I make it?
No.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So for my bonus Marvel video this week, I'm going to do a breakdown of the final trailer for X-Men Days of Future Past. I've also got some news about X-Men Apocalypse, the next movie they're doing, including the villains that they're talking about using. If you're finding me for the first time, I typically do bonus Marvel videos on Tuesdays. Be sure to subscribe to get everything, and feel free to leave me suggestions for future Marvel topics for me to do in the future. So let's get going. So I'm going to focus mostly on the new footage in the trailer. So here we go. So right off the bat, they're dropping the time travel bomb. They implied this was happening in all the trailers, you know, Wolverine being sent back to rally Professor X and the X-Men against Bolivar Trask, but now they're just flat out telling us. The voiceover explains why the Sentinels are bad for everyone, and we get a better look at the ships. There was that preview clip from the MTV Movie Awards where they were dropping out of them into battle. They really remind me of those living ships the Chitauri used in the Avengers. You know, they function basically like troop ships, just dropping troops on the ground. I'm going to be really curious to see how they explain both versions of Professor X talking to each other psychically, you know, across time. It's a really awesome visual, so it's going to be an awesome scene to watch, but it's going to have to jump through a few logic hoops based on the abilities that the mutants in the future have. They still haven't explained the time travel aspect yet. It seems like his consciousness is sent back in time, not his physical body. Professor X is involved, but they haven't completely explained how it works. Next we get to see Wolverine rallying the troops, including Beast, who for some reason is not blue, unless he's Mystique in disguise. Bryan Singer is really good at making ensemble films and thrillers, and I kind of think of Days of Future Past as like a time travel political thriller with mutants and machines instead of, you know, James Bond and just regular people, like a regular spy movie. Then they show Magneto in prison and Mystique, who's not with him. So clearly something has gone wrong after the events of the last movie. After all this, I'm even more confused about the timeline and Beast's appearance. Then we finally get the big Quicksilver intro. We've seen a lot of images of him and, you know, a few small previews, but I really think the funny part is that they're using him to break out his father, Magneto, from the Pentagon prison. Very Cats in the Cradle, and I just love that Nixon poster in the background of his house. The breakout scene is a little confusing too. I love that Xavier is punching Magneto, but why can he walk whenever he was crippled during the last movie? So many questions about this. Then they really lay it on thick with the Magneto baseball stadium effect. They really wanted to top that levitation scene from the first movie, but I think this is kind of an absurd way to do it, but I'll have to wait to see it in context before I judge it. Peter Dinklage is totally going to be epic as Bolivar Trask. Just watch him on Game of Thrones if you don't believe me. I think the design of the 70s Sentinels is really good, but the future ones are super trippy, and it really makes me excited to see what the rest of the future looks like. The ships and all the tech just look totally amazing, at least the stuff we've seen so far. Then we see Bone Claw's Wolverine, like in the post-credits scene from the Wolverine movie last year. In the promo images of future Wolverine, we saw adamantium claws, so I wonder if they just did that wrong, or if changing the past gives future Wolverine his normal claws back. More timeline questions, I know. The final scene is also really awesome. I just love that Wolverine would tell someone flat out what their future was. You know, most people would pause to consider the ramifications, but Wolverine is just like, fuck spoilers, dude, you totally die. So onto my big X-Men Apocalypse news. Essentially, it's a sequel to Days of Future Past. So Days of Future Past, you know, when it's in the past, takes place in the 70s. X-Men Apocalypse will take place in the 80s. Bryan Singer just teased that the villain might be Mr. Sinister. Obviously, there's going to be multiple villains because Apocalypse is going to be in the movie. He's going to be the big bad, but he's kind of like Thanos. So Mr. Sinister is going to be like the Loki of the movie, the villain that we see most of the time. I think of Apocalypse as being like Fox's version of Thanos. They're the two biggest villains you could possibly use, so neither studio wants to roll them out too soon. That's why it's taken so long for Marvel movies to get to Thanos. There's no word on what either Sinister or Apocalypse are going to look like, but the story will loosely be based on the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and supposedly they're going to be bringing back Nightcrawler and Gambit. So here's a quick breakdown of the timeline and how you get from Days of Future Past in the 70s to Age of Apocalypse in the 80s. In Days of Future Past, the mutants are driven to extinction. Then they attempt time travel as a way to change the future. So even if they're only a little successful in changing what happens, they basically created a whole new timeline. And the real beauty of X-Men stories is that no matter what you do, the outcome kind of always ends up being the same. So instead of being super happy hug time, the new future created in Days of Future Past is still awful. It's just overrun with minions of Apocalypse, you know, primarily Mr. Sinister. It's like you swing from humans dominating mutants to evil mutants dominating humans and mutants too. So it's almost a worse future. So Bryan Singer did say that the plot would only loosely be based on Age of Apocalypse in the comic book, so we won't really know what they're going to change about the plot until we know what the official cast is. But the good news is that Channing Tatum was in talks for Gambit. I know everyone wants to see Gambit come back, and it would be really, I guess, interesting to see Channing Tatum do that role. As for Nightcrawler, I don't know who they get to play a young version of the character, but it'll be really interesting to see if that ends up playing out. So in related news, I'm going to be doing a future video for Age of Apocalypse just to break down that storyline, but feel free to suggest future bonus topics in the comments below. I'm also going to be posting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. later tonight. Patton Oswalt was on in this episode, so it was totally amazing. You absolutely have to watch it. Be sure to subscribe to get my video. It should be up pretty late tonight, but you can click here to get the video. I'll add the annotation as soon as I post it. And click here to learn all about Captain America 3. Thank you so much for watching. Bone Claw, high fives. I'll see you guys soon.